trust. Here's a chapter on what?
Extra.
Express trust. Here's a chapter on what? Private,
Okay.
international. The deal of it is the same effort is taking us to spook ourselves up. It takes less effort to learn these things that affect our lives every day. Now you understand why they don't teach civics? Why? Civics would cover birthright issues, wouldn't it? Civics would cover science of government, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
Civics would cover inheritances, wouldn't it? Civics would cover jurisprudence and the issue of inheritance and making that aggregate distinction. So, therefore, in the argument of Genesis with Isaac in relationship to Jacob and Esau and the stolen estate or inheritance that was what? Sold for a bowl of red pottage. Notice that that word red.
Roman.
Now, that red is not accidental. The word red, that choice of word.
Why is it?
Now, here's a man of the field, right? So he coming in from the field, he's hungry, right?
Right.
So if you're a man of the field, that's where things grow on it.
Yeah, that's something there.
And that's also where the animals, the game is, isn't it? So how you gonna come in hungry when you're a man of the field and then sell your birthright for a bowl of red pottage? Because the pottage is made from stuff from the field, ain't it?
It should be.
So that means there's a conflict of consciousness, there's a conflict of interest in yourself, isn't it? And you gave up your birthright for that? So God was angry at him, wasn't he?
Perhaps.
I mean, when you read the book, it's telling you a story, but it's talking about us. We BS'd around and lost our birthright. Now we made it, everybody. And we sold our birthright for a bowl of red pottage.
Something we could have done for ourselves.
Exactly. So we're not totally innocent, are we?
No.
So we failed to honor our mothers and fathers, lost our birthright, and pissed off at everybody else. Not that we haven't been taken advantage of, but we're not innocent in this, are we?
No.
Oh, or I'm just throwing that out there.
Trust law document of the book that you recommend?
Weiss's. Weiss's handbook on trust law. So get familiar. So that just makes sense. Now, and not just that. Look at this, Dr. Naila. For your estate and your claim or reversion of your estate of the land and all accoutrements, etc., shouldn't you be familiar with what a trust is?
Sure.
So once you start studying what a trust is, how it functions, what its relationship is, then it'd be easy for you to make the determination of what type of trust you want to construct. And who's to say you can't construct more than one?
Because there are people that want, for instance, like myself, you want a trust that you want a business and you want to put your business and your property in your
now. Let's look at this. How many of our people buy books every day?
Almost of it. A lot of us, right?
Now, what is part of the problem that we're recognizing as we're discussing right now? Most of the time they buy books that are interesting or novels and other things, but the books that really they need to get, like law books and books on trust, etc., that affect them every day, on minerals, on cosmology, they will be the least ones that they usually buy because they've been turned away from them. However, those are the books that we need. You see the point?
Mm-hmm.
And this is the point. This is the other point that I want to say to you too, Dr. Naila. You'll see I'll tell people to start studying trust law, because what happens if you say to someone, set up an ecclesiastical trust, they'll start asking you what it is when they don't even know what trust is. Then someone else will tell them you should have a private international trust, and then someone would say an express trust, etc. When they should study all of them and then take responsibility for themselves. Why? Because if they have limited understanding, then they want to charge you with telling them to do this trust instead of that trust, when they should be aware of what the trusts are. And that's where their area of study should be. Why? Because all operations in government structure is dealing with positions, even the positions that they hold are positions of trust. So what are they claiming when they're claiming to be, not that they are, your so-called governor, your so-called mayor, your so-called president, your so-called senator, your so-called congressman, your so-called representative? They're claiming trust position or FOFA position over your estate. So why is it not that we have not been studying trust, when all of the political operations and economics is rooted in trust? We're not directed to it. We haven't been directed to it.
We have not been, yeah.
And so, and because most people are not aware to the refinements of what trust is and everything, rather than start studying, they start, well, what does that mean? And what happens if you tell them? They still don't get it because it's not a part of them.
True.
Now, you see why I tell people get Weiss's handbook on trust law, so they don't put their responsibility on you. Then after they study, now you can talk. It's sort of like, it's like trying to tell people, like if someone says to you, you need to know the Bible, right? And they quote a couple statements or parables from the Bible, but they don't teach you about Septuaginta, the Book of the Dead, the Vedas, and the origins of that book, etc. Some people will reject it, and some people will have an opinion, when actually you should be telling them the root of it all and tell them to read it for themselves. Let's come back and have a conversation after you study. Now you're qualified.
Well, you mentioned about books, but I would just recommend to those that may not have a lot of resources at this time to purchase books. But if you have $9.99 or 10 notes a month, that you would subscribe to Scribd, which I'll put in.
Let's put it this way:
Scribd.com, because almost all those books are on here.
Yeah.
All the trust law.
But you want hardcover.
You want it, but if you can't get it,
yes.
In the meantime, I'm saying, I know it's better to have. I got books everywhere, but I'm saying if you can't do that, if you don't have it, then at least for 10 notes, you can look at every book you want.
Not just that.
Until you get it.
But look this, because remember that can be knocked out, and as people learn, they're going to knock it out.
Of course.
They're going to censor.
But right now, it's still there.
So for years, we tell people to restore your library. Why do you think the priesthood burned the books? Exactly. But now, we're talking about the finance that people have, right?
Mm-hmm.
So this is what we say to people. Instead of buying Air Jordans, buy Skechers, or buy an ordinary set of a pair of Nikes, or a nice pair of sneaks that's less brand, and then spend the rest of the finance restoring your library for yourself and your children and your family members. And when you buy these books, just the same way when people buy your, like this book, like one thing I did, right? So when you book this up, I bought 2 or 3 and shared them. Same thing, So if you run into Weiss's, don't get one book. Get 2 or 3 and share them with your family, because you need people around you to be aware, so you can do what? Sharpen swords.
Right.
So you can spark information, you can spark conversation. These things should be on your coffee table. Now, and then look at this. When you look at a lot of your so-called wealthy Europeans that got all these different businesses, even though most of them were faces, they were signed, because most of these big-time tech businesses are really operations of CIA. However, you notice how a lot of these hybrids, they have what they call old money in their family.
Mm-hmm.
You know why they have old money?
No.
Guarantee you, the families have trust. Their stuff is in trust. And so what happens? Like as an example, all right. So here you are, right? And humorously, I know of a few instruments. It's not necessarily for the people, but you already know what I'm talking about. Where people approached you, some men approached you, and implied dating you or mating with you. Now, this is what they do, and this is happens particularly in the Western Hemisphere. Marriage is used for estate stealing, not so much for love, right? People who really know how things work, people who really understand how to preserve legacy for your family, don't just go out marrying people. That's why it may seem cruel to some of our people who really don't understand it. It's why you see a lot of hybrid families, they will do prenuptials to because they have to protect the estate for the family. People take it personal, but marriages are business relationships.
Should be.
No, that's what they. She got.
That's what they're.
Let's look at the history.
That's the intent.
No, let's look at the history. No, let's look at the history.
Okay.
See, now remember what we said. Was it hard for people to do? To start looking or researching things for what they are, as opposed to what you like them to be or what you've been told. You can do that, but know what things actually are, right? So in the ancient Canaanite, Moabite world, where these matrimony rituals have their root in Amalek, Egypt, etc. That's why marriages, or what you call matrimony, truthfully, was always prearranged. Meaning that, like, say, for instance, like, you're my daughter, right? And someone's checking you out, right? It ain't no such thing as y'all going out dating. Because there ain't no such thing as him come taking you from the family. So he got to bring a dowry. That's secondary. First, we're going to talk to his parents, and we're going to do a chart on him. And your parents are going to do a chart on their parents are going to do a chart in
vice versa. Yeah.
Vice versa. First, we're going to make sure that at least two of your planets harmonize. Because if they don't, it's a violation of divine law. And we already know that the divine nature of your bond will not work. In other words, you don't put oil and water together and shake it up because they will separate.
Right.
This is where you have your matrimony rules in nature according to earth and air, fire and water type thing. So you don't take air with earth. You take air and fire. You take earth and water. Those are your first rules. Then you look at the Trinity. The Trinity is your sun, your moon, and your ascendant. Two of them planets minimally must be harmonic. Because you already know if you put them together, after the, I'd say, like the earth, wind, and fire song, after the love is gone type thing. That means after the honeymoon is short honeymoons, and then they start arguing with each other because they're what? The nature of them are clashing.
Not harmonious.
Exactly. They don't know that they're violating nature because we're following carnal rules instead of divine rules. But if true religion is not taught, people are doing what? They're being sold to each other and don't know that that's what the system is. They're thinking because they're attracted to each other. And oh man, I was checking you out. The keisters is really keistored, and all this stuff. And you said, man, I like your sneaks and you're cool. And then you start doing stuff. It's not good. And this is what we've been trained to do, which is why most so-called matrimony, that's why they don't teach matrimony, they don't teach marriage. Because marriage is also marriage. Mars, I-9, rage. Most marriages don't work. They're actually a spell cast by the priesthood. The proper is matrimony. But matri puts the woman back into the Trinity.
Right.
Matri is mother. See, so people think that matrimony and marriage is the same thing. No, the rituals look the same, but marriage is more of a commercial commodity transaction for birthright or estate stealing, whereas matrimony is in harmony with nature and divine law for true bond. Of course, now you're getting into the cosmology or real culture, real religious culture. And of course, that refinement is generally not taught. And so now this is that gray area is where the priesthood have injected themselves. That's why when people do any research, they start finding out that that the state owns them and that they're actually listed as ships passing in the night, and that the marriage certificate belongs to the state and they're the first order. That's why when you get divorced and stuff, they come in and start stealing the estate first. They get first paid.
Hmm.
And people see it every day, but it never dawns on them that that's not proper. This is what you've been trained to. In other words, you've been sold back to each other, with the state being the first party in the trinity of the union. And the state owns your estate, your ward. And so when you come together, the barristers come in and get their cut. That's why that's why a lot of times you'll see in Western world jurisprudence, they'll say it's cheaper to keep her type thing, and vice versa. Now, keep in mind, because it's corrupted in the first place, the estate, which should be transferred through the woman, is not often protected. You see, so then they'll pit them against each other to protect her when actually they're there as an appendage to steal. And because they own the contract of sale, the state must be satisfied first. That's why on long term, you will see among our people, generations after generations, they get poorer and poorer. And the hybrid Europeans, even if they mess up, they always got a home to go back to, because their stuff is in trust. The family protects the estate and it builds over generations, where ours are always lost to the state under taxation. Being persons called Negro, Black, or colored are wards of the state under the Christian Black codes. And they themselves are supporting the church, which actually issues the codes. And then they deliver their offspring to the doctors of the dark witchery in the hospice, who are declared them dead. And so they declare the body and put a bond on them, which is the birth certificate. And then that's put on the stock market with the lodges and sold over and over again. And so therefore we don't build up wealth, do we?
No.
You bust your butt, right? Thinking you're buying property, you're sharecropping, they give you a deed. You didn't know that deeds didn't exist here before 1913 because no one tells you. And then the priesthood is on the corners, every other corner. They're military outposts. Their job is to pet you like a lamb, to keep you pacified out the pasture. And then the state comes in and shears you. You grow, you shivering. I can't wait for Jesus to come. Give me some sandwiches one of these days. And the pastor got on cashmere coat. The mayor got cashmere coat. Council people got cashmere coat. And you're paying tithing, which is a tax, a Roman tax. I thought that's why they won't tell people that tithe means 10% Roman tax. It ain't got nothing to do with Moses and Jesus and nothing. It comes from Rome. Pope Sylvester II. Do the research, y'all. So again, for those of you who are listening, look up Alonges and analyze it. Study land and analyze it. Study hereditaments and analyze it, because it all goes together. Under land. And look how it relates to you in manners that you never thought of. And this is, again, why they take you from the land and put you under the Holy See and take you out to sea. And thus the Admiralty Law. And I'm going to tell you this too. And like I said to you, and I said to people, and we've been talking for the last 4 years, and I said, I'm not defending Trump, so don't confuse it. But Donald Trump is dealing with restoration of what is called common law or land jurisdiction. And others are dealing with admiralty law maintenance, which is what's been in operation. And so, again, as we've talked about land and admiralty, hold on, I want to make a point here to you. So the concept that people have that land is simply the aggregate soil. Those who know what it is dealing with hereditatements, and your hereditatements are corporal and incorporeal inheritances. That means both customs, furniture, jewelry, the minerals that are in the soil, the stream that runs past your house, the fish that's in that water, the rocks, the gold, the silver, the jewels that are beneath your feet in the soil, etc. And your right of inheritance in relationship to that is land. Concepts of what land is limited to soil, the aggregate soil, is both limited, neutered, heavily edited, and an improper concept. So the claim to land, this is again why, even when you did that caricature of the brother,
of the guy putting the flag on the little piece of ground.
But it was kind of humorous. But what it does is symbolizes the Moors that's being confused, but they're becoming conscious, and they at least have sense enough to start staking their vexillum back on the land, bringing them back into the land jurisdiction. So now we're going back to the issues where we talked about understanding land jurisdiction, sea jurisdiction, air jurisdiction, all these things they must know.
I'll pop it up so they can.
Do you understand?
Pop it up so they can see it.
Yeah.
It's right here.
And I thought that was quite humorous.
So he's got his little flag on on his little piece of ground.
And even while they're confused and haven't learned yet what trust law is, he's wise enough to now make your claim.
Right, and that's what we want.
And this is really what we're trying to get people to see. This is what we're trying to do. To at least get the people started in the things that they need to know, knowing that it's going to take time. They didn't lose it overnight, and they're not going to regain it overnight. However, they must become competent and at least make a claim, you see?
Right.
But they must be made responsible, and they must start actually studying. They cannot do it with emotion. Do you understand what I'm saying to you? And they can't just find out about the marriage certificate. And you notice how they talk about the birth certificate, but they don't talk about the marriage certificate?
Yeah.
See, they don't recognize, it's sort of like a lot of people talking about the birth certificate because after when the Pope Francis did the motu proprio in 2013 and people discovered that the United States is bankrupt again, understand that was dissolved when it was bankrupt the first time. That all you have is a continuation of rogue operations because the true heirs are continued to be unconscious.
Well, isn't
and inactive?
Aren't the provisions of the birth certificate covered in the marriage certificates? Because it takes the eggs and everything.
Now remember, all right. Now look at the fractionalization.
Right.
They fractionalized it until there was no value, which is why Roosevelt then used the birth certificate to restart the fraud.
Okay.
It's not a new thing. It's a continuation of what Wilson did. And Wilson is a continuation of what was done with the Congress after Lincoln. This is why you see each one of those constructs are called the United States, but each one of them are spelled different. Because they know that the people don't pay attention to details. Remember, like when we tell people, when you send people to flash drive, and we always tell people to read civil orders to the Pope, and we remind them to pay attention to the different spellings of the United States. When people are talking, they say the United States, the United States, the United States, and don't pay attention to the structure and the spelling. All of these are different corporate entities, still tied to the Pope. Meaning that when one shell died, they made a new shell. And what the Pope Francis told them, no more shells. That's why they had the meeting, and he promised to stop operating the doctrine of discovery. Because remember, the people are out here marching and praying, talking about racism and prejudice. But the priesthood all know that it's really the doctrine of discovery. So they're totally incompetent, arguing the wrong. They're going in circles. And the so-called black leaders paid to keep them going in circles. The world don't want to trade them no more. So they got to fix this thing or fall altogether. Plus, um, different networks of people in the world is now starting to go after them. Do you understand? So, it's sort of like it's kind of easy for the robber to rob the bank, and just because he got out the building, don't mean he's going to get away with it. This is what's happening to them. Do you understand? Mm-hmm. Meanwhile, the ones who were robbed, the Aboriginal people, half of them don't know they've been robbed. They just think they're being mistreated. And they trying to be club members of the ones who robbed them. This is called U.S. citizen argument, civil rights, Negro citizen, 14th Amendment, that they've been desperately trying to be, that they could never be. They don't recognize that they're the victim of birthright robbery. And they're trying to be a part of the club that robbed them. And the club that robbed them is bankrupt. And they're looking to participate and to solidify a claim in the fraud, i.e., become a holder in due course of the birth certificate bonds. Them bonds are dead. However, if they can get you to seek a value in them, then you have no right of claim in the future, do you? If something is fraud and you don't declare the fraud, but instead seek to participate in it for a benefit, you've just sanctioned it, haven't you? And that's called consent, isn't it? That's why you see them keep promoting among the people, capture the birth certificate. What it actually does, it seems like the people won't get a benefit. How are you going to get a benefit of an estate that is bankrupt? There's nothing to distribute. Right. And the instrumentality that they created for its distribution, the bonds, are dead, which is why the world trade markets have crashed. And so it's like somebody trying to buy Sears stock now. For what? It's not that Sears ain't familiar. Oh, what we don't want you to do, Dr. Naila, is buy any silver. What we want you to do is invest in Kmart, which is a part of Sears, and pennies. Now, if you start checking them out in the real world of their stock, it's dead. And the only reason why all of them aren't closed is because persons that you call congressmen and senators have stock investments in them, and they've been using Wall Street to prop them up. That's called quantitative easing. In other words, they didn't collapse, including the banks, because they've been propping them up. That's why I've been telling people for 7 or 8 years, if you really want to know what's going on here, keep your eyes on GINDJAB. That's what everybody says. Yeah. See, but people in their consciousness, right, thinking, well, GINDJAB is in Germany. What does that have to do with North America? It never dawns on them unum sanctum operations. You see the point? Or the German-Dutch hybrids that took over the Order of Islam in the 1800s at the North Africa, here, Egypt. So they separated Egypt from Africa. It's mental. So you better learn about the land, because it ain't just the aggregate soil. And you've been out to sea. So we're pulling you back on the land jurisdiction. And so the concept that people have is the United States is the land. Never was.
That's a corporation.
It's a corpse.
It's a corpse.
It is the dead,
corpse,
sucking off the living. But
in vampire,
it's called exploitation.
Yeah.
Look at the synonyms of vampire, and one of the synonyms in the dictionary will tell you what? Vampire. Yeah. And it ain't like they ain't been eating your babies, because they have. Roe versus Wade, now you know what that really served, don't you? How many people look at that as helping women? Roe versus Wade. They look at it as helping women, don't they?
Mm.
They didn't look at it as meat supplies for burger joints, did they?
No,
They didn't look at it as a source of adrenochrome, did they?
no.
They didn't look at it as a source of selling hearts, livers, spinal columns, and melanin, did they?
No, or stem cells.
Well, that's the spinal cord.
Yeah, the stem cells.
We're talking like for real.
I know.
Even to this very day. And they look at Roe versus Wade as helping women to take control of their bodies, not sacrificing their children, murdering their children. See how they can turn actual murder and demon sacrifice and flesh eating and cannibalism at under the guise of helping women. They call it Roe versus Wade, and how many women in self-righteous ignorance were actually supporting child sacrifice, and half of them didn't even know when they go get 2-for-1 burger that they was eating their own children and getting sick. You notice how our people got mad cow disease,
Yeah.
and you can't reason with them, and they don't even know that it comes from cannibalism. And right to this day, most of them don't know that the reason why they got burger joints on every other corner, multiple ones, and that cows don't grow that fast. Do you see them having funerals for all these millions of abortions they have every year?
No.
Do you see crematoriums burning 24/7? No, but you do see burger joints all over the place.
Yeah, somebody put up there Soylent Green.
That's what it's called.
Mm.
They even make movies, see, because they're making movies to tell you what they're doing. So see, that removes, like you were talking in the car earlier, that kind of reduces the karmic debt.
Mm-hmm.
And so the people are consenting, aren't they?
Mm-hmm.
And so they're saying, I understand, or I stand under them. That's what they're saying. That's why the hybrids will always say that these people are consenting to their condition. And then when challenged with the information, the people say, well, we didn't know. If you know gods and devils all every other two minutes of your conversation, you certainly should know this. You know, if you know what's the mysteries of the dark side of the moon and what God did in the heavens and the earth and the Bible and the Quran and all, you know all this stuff, you should know what's in front of your face. You know, how dare you claim the love of God you do not see and don't love your brothers and sisters whom you see every day. Therefore, how dare you claim to know the laws of God's in the heavens and in the earth and creation and don't even know the laws that govern your life every day by which you measure your alleged spirituality for you to get someplace else. You know, people don't know that the Bible is a great teacher.
Well, I thank you for stopping me from throwing the book out because you said,
well, because
don't throw it
it's
out.
your stuff.
Oh no, I know now. I see it in a totally different light.
That's why.
And it was it that
It's
woke
your
me up.
book.
Look, it woke me up.
Your Bibles come from Eritrea. Go look in Book of Acts. You know, our people's concepts about the book is wrong. They think, you know, this is why you hear me always say people's concepts of you know, the so-called different religious orders. They think that if they claim to be a Jew, they only have a Torah. Mm-hmm. They think they're Muslim, they only have a Quran. They think they're Christian, they only have a Bible. The priesthood have all the books because they're all related. That's one of the keys to their power over the people.
They have it all.
They keep the people separated when all of the books originate from Saba. They do. All of them. And they think that like you'll see a lot of people that claim to be Afrocentric think that the Bible belongs to the hybrid Europeans. No, it belongs to Africa.
Someone asked you to talk about the craft full of animals. Oh, I believe that was genetic. Those were genetic.
The crafts.
You know.
Oh, you know the symbol. Oh, the symbol.
That's
you're talking about the ark.
The ark.
Oh, now the ark. Now this is the ark.
Yeah.
The ark is the womb. Yeah. Or you see in ancient Egyptian the symbol of Nut over the earth with her womb. Mm-hmm. That's the ark. The womb is the ark. Also, it is the heartbeat. It is also the vibrations of the drum. It is also the keys to the genetic makeup and alchemy that is done within the womb. And logically, our relationship to nature and our responsibility to nature and the honor of our mothers and fathers is the covenant. So the ark of the covenant begins with the womb. But the taking of two of each was not literal. It symbolizes duality, masculine and feminine duality in nature itself. Nature creates only male and female. But in some cases it was clean and unclean seven, and some were sevens and some were twos. But it was also genetics. You could always take a sampling, a genetic sampling of a bunch and put it on a. Let's look at this. Because people think that everything that we have now is modern, and back then there. How about the anthropomorphic? This is anthropomorphic. Yeah. So anthropomorphic is genetic strain, right? Mm-hmm. Let's be realistic. You can go to a zoo, which is a big complex on acres of land, can't you? Can't you? Yes. Now, the point of it is, what ship has you ever seen that can hold not just those, and those are limited animals of all types, where you can have food, feed, water for all of them and all people on any ship? Nice. It's anthropomorphic. It's for children. It's preservation, no different than, do you know that they have archives for organic seeds that they preserve, that they keep away from humanity, so humanity can't have all the proper foods they need, but so it can be preserved for future generations? Mm-hmm. Right now, as we're speaking, that's an ark. Yeah. Preservation of. Yeah, and of course, people don't know that cloning is not a new. True. It's ancient. As long as we've been here, we've been cloning. Absolutely. It's why half the vegetables that people eat are hybrids. You know, as an example, if you get a real potato, it's either red or purple. Mm-hmm. If it ain't red or purple, it's hybrid. Same thing with the corn or maize. Maize, or they call maize, maize. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. We've got hundreds of different strains, and they've come from thousands of years of hybriding. So, like, say, for you want some of your best tasting corn and really beautiful corn, then you have to go in Southwest Africa. That means you have to go in the Yucatan and below, down to Peru, Chile, etc., where the hybrids have not destroyed everything. Because up here in the north, they pretty much destroyed everything. You know, because they're in the process of ridding the land of the people, yeah, and creating sickness. So most of the foods we get here are hybrids. And that's just the truth. Without any nutritional value. Yeah. Sometimes things that are harmful. As a matter of fact, when Dr. Sebi, was teaching people about proper foods, etc., because remember, that's from Honduras. So now you're in Central Africa. So the Yucatan is Central Africa. Yeah, because if you take that part and if it was in between, Olmexum. Okay. Oh, they'll say Olmec. Olmec. And see, so more of the cultural foods are just simply natural part of our diets. And so one of the beauties of Dr. Sebi is he's just simply reintroducing the pre-existing culture to the people. That's all. And we're blessed with even a lot of his family members who are still maintaining the legitimacy of that African culture, of the relationship of the proper foods for the cell construction and cell maintenance. That's why certain foods they would teach you that are for the cattle, but not for you. The cattle and other animals, chickens and cattle, got more than one stomach, or chickens got gizzards. Cows have more than one stomach.
Mm-hmm.
You know, certain foods are designed for them, but not for you. You know, but again, we've been outside of our culture. So not only have we, in many ways, lost connection with the land, land. You know, we've thus also lost our inheritance. So let's look at the anthropomorphic story. You know, honor your mothers and fathers, right? That the land given to you by your God, etc. That your days may be long upon the land that the Lord thy God has given thee.
Mm-hmm.
You're talking inheritance. So that which is passed down from your mothers and fathers are both corporal and incorporeal. So it's both the knowledge and the physical land. That's where you get in law in corporal or corporal and incorporeal. So incorporeal would be the abstract, or what you call the spiritual. See, so when people are looking at land, they're not looking at that, are they? Because they're not taught that. They just think dirt, don't they? Like a farm. Well, guess what? It's not limited to that, is it?
No.
We've been played on a major scale. And didn't come from some mystery devil, came from the priesthood. And the codes to destroy our families and to create the schism that we're suffering from. Our people say our people are divided and they need to come together, blah, blah, blah. All you need to do is read the Christian Black codes and you'll know why they haven't. And you know also the state of mind. And you also know why the men and the women are what? Coming together and they're competing with each other rather than harmonizing and thinking something's wrong with, yo, you don't love me, so we're breaking up. We don't know that we're out of harmony. By our belief systems that have nothing to do with spirituality, have everything with mind control under colonial operations, under codes noir. And we blaming the devil. And Pastor Pigfoot is making his collections for his 501c3 Skull and Bones agreement with Rome. Now you understand why in the poorest neighborhoods they can afford to have one of them buildings on every other corner.
That and a liquor store.
Their military operations are people think it's God's house and stuff. Well, keep thinking it.
Someone asked Beverly Hills asked a question of what is the big secret about the Rh negative blood?
The Rh negative blood is they're kind of like referring to the original, or even when they talk about the zero or the aught.
You have the you have O.
Yeah, they're talking about the original people.
Well, there was a word that the Rh negative I'd heard.
But the Rh dealing with the rhesus monkey.
Yeah, monkey or
extra. Yeah, the rhesus. What? Charles Darwin. All right. Remember how we've told people, remember I was going into your Oxford and you have the abbreviated Oxford.
Mm-hmm.
And I tell people, go to your unabbreviated Oxford dictionary and go look up hybrid. And then go look to the scientific name for Anthropopithecus and Pongidae, which is troglodyte nigger, and put them together. And then you'll understand the rhesus aspect. And also you'll understand why sometimes their blood clashes with ours. This is rhesus monkey.
So it's okay. So there's a mixture. There's some
chimpanzee.
Okay.
The reason why they can't find the so-called missing link or structured body because it doesn't exist. The missing link is the knowledge of the genetic experiments, not an evolutionary stage between Pongidae.
What's missing is how they did it.
That's called Dr. Moreau's Island. Look at the movie.
I saw that, the Island of Dr.
Moreau. Now, go look in your linguistic translation.
Moreau.
Yeah, no, go look up.
I've seen it.
What is Moreau? Moreau is French for more.
More. It's the, although a Moor is not
No,
used,
they're telling you that
but a Moor is
they're
not
talking.
depicted in.
This is what they're talking. Dr. Moreau's Island is the hybrid Europeans' angle to tell you about Yaqub experiments in the Yucatan. And the island is talking about Patmos, that's talked about in the Bible.
Where John said he was exiled too.
There you go. See, not unlike they were talking in the car, they tell you. The deal of it is, do you know what you're hearing? You know, and so if people don't have these reference points, the hybrids can do stories just like a Wild Wild West with Will Smith, The Black Knight with Martin Lawrence, True Romance with Anthony Hopkins, The Wizard of Oz, and the people don't know that they're talking about them. But what does it do? It reduces the karmic debt response.
Mm-hmm.
You know, just like when you were talking in the car earlier, and Sis was analyzing to figure out the dog and pony show that's being played out now.
Mm-hmm.
The interjection that I would have interjected to give thought to the process to look at would be the two United States.
Okay.
The corporation distinguished from the legitimate treaty agreements concerning trade on the organic land, LAND. Mm-hmm. But if you're not aware of that, it confuses because you already know, well, here's two hybrids, neither one of them are what? The true aboriginal. So ultimately, what's being played out here? One to get you to accept the other, whereas both you lose. Yeah, and what are we supposed to be doing? What are we supposed to be doing meanwhile? And that's claiming your estate while they're squabbling over your estate. Mm-hmm. Here's a question here. Let me ask you about that. I missed it. It was a little while. I missed that question. All right. I'm gonna No, it was, you may know about this, but I'm not sure if it's here. Hybrid people that come once a year to impregnate women. What was that? For you all who are listening, look up heterogeneous hybrid. And that'll give you even more clear comprehension of what we're talking about. Heterogeneous. Yep. This is where you'll see in the Oxford Dictionary where the anthropologists make reference to the Englishman. He says, at best, we Englishmen are but heterogeneous hybrids. They're telling you. It's not that it's not written. It's not that it's not there. But most people don't know what they're reading, do they? And of course, most of our people, you know, in these most recent generations are scared of books. You know, if it ain't the Bible or the Quran or the Torah, they're scared. You know, they're not supposed to get into that kind of stuff. That's God's stuff, you know. It's not spiritual. You get